Okay. Welcome again to the recording. We welcomed everybody just a minute ago, but we're going to go ahead and start with the recording. So let's go ahead and move into it. If you've got on to Menti, go ahead and give the thumbs up, the little thumbs up on the Menti app or on the screen. And we can see that you're here. It looks like 5 of us are on the Menti already. So please go ahead and join in because we get the opportunity to interact and inject some information. So, and if you want to see if there's any questions or anybody has any questions, Chris, as we go along, feel free to just stop me. All right. So authority, power, and influence. How many people here have had a situation where they've had to influence without the authority? I would imagine pretty much everyone. Yep, exactly. So we're going to talk about the difference and really just have a conversation around the difference between power and influence. Definitely want to hear your thoughts, hear your experiences, the different types of situations you run into. This is really about just having a collaborative conversation around this to get a lot of group share and a lot of community share on this topic. And I would expect that we're going to have some threads or some other things that follow after this Coach's Corner. So our first little Menti activity here. What words do you use in your daily, weekly, yearly, professional life to define power? And if you're on Menti, you can go ahead and drop those in. If you want to, you can just come off of mute and even just talk about it if you'd like to. Either way is fine. Inflexibility, authority, strength, final authority. I like that. Reward. Who had reward? If you wouldn't mind.
Hey, how's it going? This is Jimothy. Hey, how's it going? Good. I had put in addition to punitive, because it's like two sides to the same coin sometimes.
Reward and punitive, huh? Yeah, okay. I like that. When you think about reward, what do you think about? When you
so what do I think of? I try not to think too much. I wanted to give very like my raw answer because it was just like, what do you think about when it comes to power? So just when I thought reward, so if someone has power, that to me, their ability to reward, so to me, it's very contextual and subjective. So it means you have some type of control over something that the subject of your power would want or need. So that's really like, if I had to like vocalize it, that's how I would put it into words.
I like that. Inspire. Go ahead and inspire.
I had inspire.
So what are your thoughts on inspire? Why that word came to mind?
That just being able to get a collective group of people to sway their minds and do things differently.
Yeah, absolutely. Final authority, strength, and power. Empower from the standpoint of the person when you're working from a position of power, that you're empowered to do something, or that you can empower others, or both.
That was mine. I empower others.
Empower others. Gotcha. Cool. Any other last ones before we move on? Let's get a little gather.
Yeah, so when I heard this reward and punitive, these two words, what came up was this psychological triangle, concept of psychological triangle or drama triangle. I don't know if anyone is aware of that or know about it. So the basic concept of triangle, and you can Google it, it's usually people who are playing power game, they take there are 3 positions that they can take or they make you take. And the 3 corners are abusive, rescuer, and victim. So if they are in this punitive or intended to punish corner, then they are more acting as abusive, and they want to make someone victim. So they force other people to be victim, and in that triangle. And many times people change positions between abusive and victim. So they claim to be victim, at the same time they are abusing someone. And when they take position as a victim, they make someone the rescuer, like you have to go and rescue them. And they also use reward. So this is a very common thing, that they use reward when they have abused you. They use reward to say, hey, it's okay, and keep you in the same triangle playing their game.
That's really interesting. That's really interesting. I'd like to learn more about that, because that makes a lot of sense. I don't know about the triangle. I've never like experienced it myself, but certainly sounds like it makes a lot of sense. And I know that for myself, I've certainly experienced those situations in work and personal life from interacting with others as well.
You want something to eat? Fix some food.
Michelle,
Yes.
did you have something?
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries. Welcome.
Hi, this is Jenna. Hi, everyone. I was almost kind of had like a negative reaction to the word power for something, and then it reminded me of this book that I bought to read but have not yet read, because it's called Power versus Force. And when I read the title of this, it like shifts my had a context shift of like power. I don't know, reading Power versus Force just changed away my negative reaction to the word power. Maybe I'll read this and let you know what I find out.
No, that's good. Yeah, definitely. And post some of your most impressionable thoughts around the subject matter you're reading there, because it's funny, because I picked this graphic, right, as that kind of negative mindset around power and, you know, the abuse of power and all those things. But you're right, it doesn't have to be, right? It doesn't have to be powers. It's not the way it's necessarily constructed. So any other thoughts on this before we go forward?
I'd like to mention, I mean, I was the one who put authority to take action.
Okay.
So I believe that, I mean, that's my point of view, that power is, I mean, it's absolutely important that you have the authority within the organization to take action on the promises that you keep with, promises that you make to anyone that you're working with, like you would be able to resolve X and Y, Z issue. So if you don't have the authority to take that action, then that power is meaningless. I mean, the promise is meaningless. So I believe that power also needs to be associated with authority to take action, positive action, hopefully. So yeah.
We hope, right? That's the idea.
Yeah. So those are my 2 cents.
Excellent. Any other thoughts? Okay. Well, we'll
had put down
Oh, go ahead.
inflexibility. I would like.
Go ahead.
I had one more word to add to the list, and that would be responsibility.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. There is there's certainly an implied, if not explicit, responsibility around that, right? What's the saying? With power, great power comes great responsibility. Exactly. Was there another one? I thought I heard someone, Jimothy, was that you or?
Yeah, well, Michael, I apologize. My internet is not great. It hasn't been great for the last few days. Obviously, the internet company has power over me. But I was wondering,
don't they? Over all of
right?
us.
Telecoms. So I was wondering, whoever put down inflexibility, I would love to hear that person expound on that just a little.
So, guys, this is MC. I did kind of put that in there, and I agree with the earlier comment about the negative connotation around that word power. It's really interesting. So you guys, and that was kind of an outgrowth of that, you know what I'm saying? That was my way of kind of channeling that negativity. That's where it came from.
Interesting. Yeah, it's kind of cool when you do these polls real quick like this, and you're asked to do something just within a minute's time, right? It's usually whatever comes off the top of your head. You're kind of getting your forward-facing self to right on the page, and then when we get the opportunity to talk about this stuff, we get all those different aspects around this. It really helps to broaden it. This is why communities like this, I think, are so fun and valuable, because it helps you expand and consider different sides of the Rubik's Cube, right? You keep turning it over because someone else is used to seeing it from the other side, and it's really helpful. It is for me anyways. So when we look at the next one, sorry, I'm moving back and forth here. What words do you use, or what comes to mind as we've been using it in this one, when you use the word influence? So we've got in here 3 of them right now. So affect, sway, alter. Sharing knowledge. And if you want, you can just vocally, you can go off of mute and talk about one, or you can enter it in here onto the Menti. I like that. Listen. Who had listen?
I did.
So,
Because I mean, in order to influence someone, you really do have to understand where they're coming from to begin with,
right.
so that you can identify what issue is that they're trying to tackle, and then you can present your case as a way to solve that problem.
It's tough to be influential if you don't know who you're influencing, right?
Yeah, we had a coach in an area, and they were very unhappy with the way a team was doing their thing, and came at them with, "You're doing it wrong. You're doing this, this, and this," and it was not well received. They came to me and talked to me about it, and I go, well, figure out what their problems are. Listen to them first, and then figure out what the greatest change they could make to have an effect on their problems. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, to be continued. I definitely want to hear how that comes out, right?
Bum, bum, bum.
Exactly. Effect, right? Mentor, guidance, guide, persuasion is up there. I like perspective too. Who had perspective?
Okay, I win today.
You're influencing.
Yeah, exactly. So influence, obviously you're trying to influence from a perspective that other people don't see. So being aware of that.
Yeah, very much so. Who else has questions on anything on the board, or any other thoughts that aren't on there around the definition, or what you think of in terms of the word influence?
Well, rather than saying word, I would like to use concept of Aikido, that you become part of the force first before you can influence. So being part of the force where people feel like you are part of them is the first step.
Yeah, definitely. Any other thoughts? Any other questions on other words? Okay. Well, we've got this here. We'll move it forward. So this was a few things from some of the leadership course that we work with. And I know you probably, if you've gone with Kumar in some of those courses or some of that time or had conversations with him, he's probably talked about this as well. We've included a lot of these thoughts, right? In what we just did with the two word clouds, the idea around power and influence. And I think we've actually expanded on just these quick bullet points a little deeper, and given some perspectives on both sides of the coins, because I think I think you all said it really well. The idea around power is not necessarily a bad thing, and influence is not necessarily just all a good thing, right? I think it's not about good or bad, but it's about approach. There's two different approaches here, and you can think about them as ways to approach stuff. And because there's certainly different situations where one or the other may be more beneficial or may be more impactful in terms of its utilization moving forward on that. So John Maxwell talks about it as leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And I think while that's the case in many cases, when might you choose a power-based approach over an influence-based approach? Feel free to go ahead and go off mic and talk about it, or you can enter it into Menti or both.
I would think you would use the power-based approach when you have a group that is just uncooperative, not listening or hearing one another. At some point, you have to put the hammer down and say, okay, this is what we're doing.
Thing that comes to mind when you say that, Michelle, I think about one of my son's second grade classes that on a week full of rainy days was just fit to be tied. Right? Situation where there's not much listening going on. Decision paralysis, time critical decisions. Danger Will Robinson, I like that, right? That idea that there's something on the line. That new on I think it's on Netflix, that new the story about the 13 folks that were trapped, the team that was trapped in the cave, I guess came out. I think it's Netflix that it was on. It was either Amazon or Netflix, I'm not sure. But I'm anxious to see about that story because I remembered reading about it a little bit and seeing, situations like that where it's life or death, where you can't be, you can't worry about paralysis analysis. It's going to be there's not an opportunity there there's only so much opportunity, right? Maybe there's a time to influence up until a point when something has to be made, and then at some point something has to be done, right? There's a critical due point. Last resort, I think, is interesting. Talk about that. Whoever had last resort on there.
Yeah, Michael, it's Jimothy again. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah. You sound good.
Okay, so yeah, I put last resort. Actually, that was the only thing that I put inside the form on Menti. So from my experience, to me, the more that one has to demonstrate power, like the lesser your influence becomes, like over time. Mm-hmm. And to me, like influence is really what kind of makes long lasting changes. Power definitely can kind of get you through moments, but the more that you do it with the same entity or person, I believe your influence would be diminished over time. Because we all have like I think we all have like limits to demonstration of power. Nobody likes to feel oppressed, and power can somewhat feel oppressive if it's manifested or demonstrated over time. Mm-hmm. So that's why I put last resort.
Okay.
I'm not.
Well, this is why we have these groups, right? Because there's different experiences, different mindsets. There's different situations, right? I think someone said situational earlier, which I thought was interesting. And I think you're right. Yeah, if it's in a situation where If someone you're having to deal with someone all the time who's always got the power play, it can get very demoralizing or deflating in terms of collaborative nature and innovation and things like that, right? Novice teammates is the last one on here I wanted to ask about before we went forward and thought about it. Who had novice teammates?
I threw that one. I threw that one in there.
Okay.
And I agree with Jimothy as well. It's yeah, it is that last resort, but there are instances where you're working with people that don't know a lot. You know, they're really struggling, and you know, and they might be able to make a decision quickly, but sometimes it's the wrong decision, and you have to use your power in that setting.
Yeah. My son is 15, and I've been teaching him. We have a place up in Canada, and when I was in my teens and 20s, I had a lot of wood to cut and split. So we had trees we were bringing down and splitting logs and doing this stuff. So I'm teaching him how to split logs with a wedge and a mallet and everything else, and how to do it safely, right? Because you can really hurt yourself if you're swinging an axe around, or you're doing a sledgehammer, or God forbid, giving someone a chainsaw, and they've never used them before. Plus he's getting it, he's in his teens, he's trying to get into his body. He's not quite super strong yet, but he's getting stronger, and all these other factors into play, right? I'm 50 some years old, right? I'll say leave it at some. And I've swung a few axes and I've hit myself a few times. And if you can help someone avoid a situation where they could hurt themselves until they get the experience, he's trying to say, well, I want to use a chain. No, you're not using the chainsaw. There's nothing you're going to influence me. There's no way you're going to influence me to use a chainsaw until you show me you can split it this way first, and then we'll move on to this. But so that novice teammate, that's definitely a situation where having and retaining the power, retaining it and not giving it out in those situations could certainly be beneficial, or at least risk reduction, right? May not change outcomes, but at least it minimizes the risk of a different type of outcome that you're not looking for. So I think it's good. Any other thoughts? Cool. And we'll get this out there. We'll get the copy of the Menti as we go too, so we see that. Are there situations where one may work better than the other? We may have covered a few of those in talking with the last one. Any thoughts? In either direction. Naga, some reason you're not coming through. It looks like you're unmuted, but
Sorry.
There you go.
Okay. So what's connecting with me with your example of log cutting or stuff like that is power destroys and power breaks.
Barely hear you. So
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm not sure if the mic is picking up from somewhere else or.
Oh, okay.
There we go.
Sorry about that.
No, that's good.
So what it connected to me is with your example of log cutting and chainsaw is how we use power, and using power. Many times people use it to break things rather than move things, or destroy things rather than help. So that's where it's connecting me right now.
So the utilization of the power, and if it's retained, how is it used?
Right.
What's it used for? What are the intentions of its use?
Right.
And do people use it as intended? You can give structures, right, where it's like, hey, even in a DRI structure, right, when you have directly responsible individuals, I don't know how many folks here, thumbs up somewhere, camera or on the thing, are familiar with directly responsible individuals, DRIs, right? I was working with a client in Cleveland last week, and we were talking about, trying to educate a larger group of the organization. Now they've had a DRI structure for a group of leaders at a manufacturing plant where they're running the plant without a plant manager, which is not a common thing. It's all the influential people and the leads and the subject matter experts from the different parts of the value stream for what they produce, both their services and their products. And the DRI structure has that kind of that DRI lead facilitator, right? There's the facilitator, and then there's the lead decision maker. That not necessarily they could abuse that power where they decide who's going to make the decision all the time, which isn't the intent. Or it could be used as intended to be able to say, hey, when there's a log jam or we can't come to a situation, they're gonna follow the instructions as the team laid out for them to do, right? The team gave that person a certain amount of power in the instance where the DRI structure can't come to alignment consensus on something to do. And whether that person chooses to use it properly or improperly will probably determine how long they have that role. But yes, I think you're right. The intent around that is very important, as well as the situation. So.
Yeah, and I was hearing you, another thing came up, it's connection to Aikido, that Aikido is not about breaking people, although you can, but it's more, joining in with power so that you have ability to influence the direction.
I think so too. And I think it's interesting, you talk about power and influence as being like the heads and the tails of the same coin, but even if you do think of it that way, it's still one coin, right? There's a share there. There's somewhat of a share there that you can conceptualize and think about that's going on somewhere in the middle of that coin, and it's kind of narrow. But it's there. I think these are all.
Influence.
Go ahead.
Hence, power to influence.
Right.
We always say we have the power to influence. Probably that's why we say it, because they're part of the same coin.
Exactly. I like this: critical decisions, regulatory, high risk, social networking. Interesting. Who had that one?
I did.
Go ahead.
You have a group of people that you're trying to lead towards a certain direction. If you're not their boss or their parent or their pastor, they don't have to listen to you. So influence would definitely have to be what you leaned on.
Right. Yeah. That's true. Final decisions, individuals' expertise level. That's that idea around the DRI structure, right? Where, hey, if we're all can't kind of come to an alignment, who's the closest to this thing? Who has the most expertise around it? Are we okay with going in that direction, even though we're not totally sold on it, because that person just has more experience and knowledge, that we're going to lean on that, right? Relationship and context. I think that's very, very interesting too. Learning versus crisis. I think that could definitely play into this, right? With that situation. And knowledge work. Who had knowledge work?
That was me again. This is MC. And so much of the work that we do, and I'm assuming most everyone here is kind of in that IT space. Yeah, it's like every time that you kind of launch out, you're doing something brand new for the very first time, and we really are leveraging and relying upon that collective intelligence of group. It's not rote activities that we do.
Absolutely. Any other thoughts on this before we go forward? Okay. So, who here is familiar with situational leadership or self-situational leadership? Blanchard and Hersey. Getting some hearts over there, a couple of them. The idea that when you're looking at this, and you can see on these two graphs, that there are levels of experience and a level of proficiency with different things, and that say as a person myself, I may have a lot of fluency and a lot of experience in one area, and that doesn't necessarily make me that doesn't necessarily transfer across everything. So the idea and that concept that you can be new at one thing and an expert at another. With that being the case, that things are situational. That necessarily, if I'm brand new at using a chainsaw, I shouldn't, but I'm really good at using an axe. I shouldn't just say, well, I'm really good at an axe. A chainsaw is not going to be a problem at all. It's different. It's completely different. And I should be the amount of direction or directive assistance I should receive with the chainsaw versus, you probably don't need to give that to me with the axe, because I'm pretty proficient and I've shown my expertise. He can pretty much manage that on his own. I'm not going to worry about bothering him with that. In fact, if he's got suggestions, I'm probably going to listen to that and take it in, because he really knows what he's doing there to make things better. However, on this other thing, he's brand new, and I don't want to necessarily, while I give him credit for knowing the first thing, that doesn't necessarily mean I should just let him go on the second thing, because that's not actually going to help him. It's not going to help me as a person that's new to that second idea. This was something myself personally, I went through this back in the 90s, and it was amazing because I was part of an operations group for a sales organization, and sales and ops were always like this, always fighting, right? We all got down and we all sat down and started doing this stuff, and it opened up a lot of communication conduits. It helped us to collaborate a whole lot better with each other. And we started to see each other's sides a lot more, because even though we would recognize someone as an expert over here, someone would treat them in a different way over here, and someone would receive that the wrong way. They're like, well, wait a minute, I'm a senior vice president of blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that's great. But have you ever used email before? No. Right. So, okay, well, we're going to show you how to use email as if you're brand new to using email, even though you're a senior vice president at sales. I actually had that situation at that company where someone was so new to email, they had somebody helping them write their own emails, even though they were a proficient salesperson for 15 years. So that concept around situational leadership and influencing behaviors, and how you do that, depending on the proficiency level and knowledge level of yourself and the person you're trying to assist or work with in this case, or team up. Any other folks have experience or situations, or you have leveraged situational leadership in their own careers in different ways that you care to share? Because I think it's really a powerful thing, especially when it comes towards balancing and leveraging both power and influence.
I've had it a couple times where I have not kept up my skills up to date, and I find out that I'm for whatever reason, right, company gets acquired or whatever, and I'm literally going back from a leadership position to, something, taking a step or two steps back to start over, right? And how I approach it really, it really determines how you, the level that I'm trying to perform at. And so I've had to apply it to myself, right, in terms of how I set my expectations. And as well, I've also done it in leadership positions where I've had folks come in who were, to your point, Mike, maybe they were in sales and they've come over and they're going to be a project manager. Okay? And I'm sorry, you don't know squat about project management, so I'm going to have to help you learn that part, right? So yeah, it's definitely applicable.
Yeah, especially with role switching and job switching and how jobs change these days. And even a role that was defined when you started it has changed since you started it, right? Because the environment, the context, the VUCA of the world around the role is changing it and influencing it differently, and you're having to pivot and move forward.
Yep.
I think it's very, very interesting stuff. And if you're not exposed to this, to situational leadership and those types of things in the quadrants, really helpful stuff in helping someone to figure out who's very proficient at one thing and they're transitioning, to help them understand why you're interacting with them in a way that's different than the way you interact with them with the thing that they're really proficient at.
I think mostly people struggle with understanding that lack of leadership in a certain situation doesn't mean lack of respect. So,
Yeah.
I mean, mostly people equate leadership with respect. So when they don't have that leadership in a certain situation, they feel disrespected. So probably that is where the struggle comes in, to understand that this doesn't mean that it's disrespect. It just means I'm learning a new thing.
I think you took a peek ahead at my deck, didn't you? That's a perfect segue into where we're going next, is talking about the levels of leadership. And this is from John Maxwell's material, but you're exactly right. I think that definitely happens. And this concept around what type of leadership opportunity do you have based on where you're at in these levels, right? And what others see you as, what others see you as based on their experiences with you, or information around that, or the scuttlebutt around the office, or whatever it happens to be, right? So the idea here around these 5 levels with position, permission, production, people development, and personhood. How many folks here are familiar with this? I know we've got some John Maxwell folks on that have gone through some of this. Ali, is that you? You trying to say something? I guess not. Anyone here familiar with, utilize these levels? Recognize it with folks? So I think it's very interesting. Again, it's kind of like the self-situational stuff. Understanding this really helps you to understand what level of influence. If, for example, if you're a coach, if you're an instructor or a consultant, what level of how do you grow influence within an organization if you've been there for a while? Or what's it like when you're moving to a new client and when you're trying to, or a new industry within the same stuff that you're trying to educate or coach or consult on, if it's in a different industry itself and they provide services versus products, or direct to consumer versus B2B or something else, and how those things change. So I think these are if you've had an opportunity to see it or to go through it, the leadership course that we work with goes a lot into this, talks a lot about the John Maxwell stuff, but it's really, really helpful in understanding why some folks are able to do certain things in a more influential way and why others are not, or why they don't have the opportunity yet to maybe do that, or what they even need to do to get to a certain level of influence. And the different influencing levels that you can achieve. So any other thoughts on the 5 levels from folks that may have experienced it? Do you recognize any of these in your ability to influence today? Maybe everybody's eating their lunch while while we're on.
I'm just feeding through each of those levels.
There's a progression, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, you'll have this, you can see this and look back at it. And then if you choose to dive deeper into it, it's very, very helpful, because it's kind of nice to do a self-assessment. I know usually have several clients at one time, and I can look at those clients and go, what is my level of leadership what am I capable of doing based on where am I on these levels at this client versus another client? And they're different. They're same person. I have the same knowledge to give everybody, but I have different situational elements that are coming into play that when you tie the two together, it really kind of shows me what my ability is. And then I have to figure out, how do I get, if I need to get something done and it's not getting done, how do I get that other, how do I start to influence differently? Or how do I start to get more influence to be able to have a greater impact, provide better value to the folks that I work with? So, and in thinking about that, what are some of the ways to lead without authority? So we talked a little bit about this. What are some of the things you can think about?
Ways to lead.
One thing I think about is trying to make sure that I'm communicating and sharing things that I know. Because if people feel a little more confident in my abilities or my understanding of a situation, they may be more likely to kind of go with what I'm suggesting. But I like something that someone else said about the listening too. Is like that's something I need to kind of take back to, is make sure that I'm always listening to hear what their concern is, rather than just saying, well, here's all the data, here's all this information, this is why we should do this, but listen to them first before, going on a big spiel of things.
I think it's interesting. Yeah, I would agree with you on that. We had a gentleman come in. We're trying to redo some stuff in our kitchen, and he came in from one of the big box stores and looked around the kitchen and started giving us suggestions, and we hadn't even asked a question yet. And it was kind of off-putting, it's like, what do you just going to provide us a solution without knowing what we want? Is that it's like, I appreciate your expertise, but you don't even know what we're trying to do here. So it was a very interesting, it just happened like last week too. Very interesting experience. I think you're right. How can you give folks ahas if you're not getting them for yourself first from that person?
Mm-hmm.
I like these. Share the why. Setting the example. Showing up. What's showing up? Who had that one?
Oh, I mean, most leaders are not always connecting with the team on a regular basis. So sometimes they might feel that why this person is suddenly coming and talking to us. So if we show up on a regular basis and interact with the team on a regular basis, that does help the team it's easier to talk to them and influence them, or put them in the right direction, or show them the right direction.
Building that relationship, right?
Yeah. Relationship building, yes.
Yeah, because you're building that relationship. Chris, what do we used to call this? The bungee manager?
Yeah.
Everybody.
The seagull manager too, right? They'd fly in, poop all over the place, and fly out.
The seagull manager, the bungee manager would kind of like all of a sudden, hey, how's it going? And then they're gone. And it's like, just you didn't see much. How could you build a relationship with those folks if they're not around?
People don't like you, they will not listen to you.
Yeah. That's human nature, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not the psychology expert here, but I think it's kind of a 101 topic, right? It's to be able to influence, people have to be able to connect and have some kind of respect, and they're not going to have that if they don't like you.
I'm sorry, what did you say, Mike?
What was that?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Provide your suggestions to a key person and allow them to present the idea as if it were their own. Leading from the back of the room, right? That's kind of it's a nice specific definition or example of influencing. Giving, not taking all the credit. It's in a service type role, leading for the benefit of others or the overall good. Right. These are good. Any other thoughts? These are pretty good. I like these. And the what's in it for me. You may have a lot of folks that you run into that they need to see that. They need to see that they're winning before they're willing to jump in. How many folks here are familiar with Rogers Innovation Adoption Curve? It was made quite a while ago. It was really about the idea of accepting new products into a marketplace, right? Like imagine when the iPhone first came out, right? What's the acceptance level? It was a completely different thing. We went from BlackBerries with all these keys on it to a flat screen with no keys at all, nothing, right? And a lot of people didn't like that. And some people are like, oh, look at all this new stuff. The innovators, there's this, it's a bell curve, and it talks about the dispersion of any group of people, any sizable group of people. There's going to be some kind of a representative model of a dispersion of the mindsets around change, the way people think about change. If you're saying, hey, you got to go ahead and we're going to force you into this change, or this change is coming, how willing is someone to adopt that change based on a type of, call it a persona, or the way that they view change? How much fear do they have? How much safe space do they have? How much do you need to prove to them that the change is valuable, that it's good, that it's safe, that they're going to be okay, that they're going to come out better on the other end? And as you go across that curve from the front end, the fire starters of the world, they're influencing and making change. They're bored if there is no change. In fact, if it's a nice settled environment, they're not even around. Folks at the other end still have BlackBerries. I'm never getting rid of my BlackBerry until you shut it off. I don't care. I'm not interested in it, right? It's just not for me. It's great. Go have fun, but this is mine. So, and then you've got this group of people in the middle that are having differing levels of need to be satisfied before they're comfortable with moving to the change, the pull effect of it. And that idea of listening that you mentioned before is really key, because if you're listening to what they're saying, you're getting a clue as to what they need in order to make the change, to come with you. If you're not listening, the likelihood is you can't even figure out where they were on that curve. You just know that they're not ready to go, but you don't know how ready they are and how much you're going to have to do to get them comfortable with that change. So I think that's interesting. So last couple of things here, and we mentioned a few of these things, right? Some of the things you can do, be able to explain the why, be able to talk about the vision, right? Get people involved in that. You're going to get ahas back. When you're talking about the vision, you're giving people information, you may be filling in the blanks that you didn't even know were there. And that in some cases may be just enough. In other cases, it starts the conversation where they can start asking questions, because why is where all the questions comes from. Usually if you tell somebody you're doing something and you tell them who it's impacting, when you tell them why, that's where most of the conversation happens. Without telling them why, it's where most of the assumed alignment is without having it, because you haven't had those people assuming that the whys are equal, but they may be completely off. So definitely being able to explain the why is one of the items. I think somebody mentioned it earlier, talk about the outcomes, right? So talk about what it is you're trying to achieve, talk about what we're trying to do, why are we doing this, and the outcomes kind of go along with that. This is the output that we're looking for, but more importantly, this is what the outcome of that output is. Give more than you take. I think a few people mentioned that in multiple different ways, right? That idea of being a giver and being a listener is definitely giving more than you take, and thinking that in it, it's also leading from the back. You're influencing and you're trying to pull people out. Be inclusive in the decision-making, having structures like DRIs or different types of structures where you agree upon the operating rules kind of before you start making decisions. And then having that team agreement or something like that, where you say, hey, this is how we're going to do it. The more inclusive you can be with that, and the more you can get people to get their voices heard, not only will it be better for collaboration and morale and the enlightenment and enjoyment of things, but its innovation goes up dramatically. Risk goes down dramatically when you have those situations. So, and then celebrating success, right? And marketing the success. Let people know. You want to get folks from the adoption curve that have a lot of needs, that are late majority. They have a lot of questions and concerns you have to answer. Start promoting how well things are going, or when you have successes. And you can promote the challenges alongside of it, but certainly don't just focus on the negatives. I asked people this, I've asked over 1,000 people this, and nobody has said yes to it yet. I say, have you ever done an RCA, or root cause analysis, in any one of your roles? Have you ever been involved in one? Anybody here? Thumbs up? Wait. Yeah. So it makes you think of root canal analysis, right? It's like really, really painful, and it's usually on not fun things. How many people have ever done an RCA on something that was wildly successful? The most successful thing you've ever done. Did you ever sit down and do an RCA on it? Because an RCA is a powerful tool, but it's got a negative connotation to it, just like power. Why? Because the only time we ever use it is on something when things went bad. So it's got a bad connotation. If you think about an RCA, the idea of breaking something down so that you can repeat it versus breaking something down so you don't repeat it, right, is really powerful thing. So celebrate the successes, but take some of these things and think about this in terms of some of the tools and try to leverage them in ways that you haven't thought about leveraging before. If you could put a positive spin on a technique, people will learn that technique and enjoy the technique. And then when you have to use it for something that's not so great, it's not as big of a deal. People get the value of doing the exercise and they're not focused on the negativity of the outcome that you're going after. And it can really help influence and change the way people collaborate and how much influence you can have with them to pull those things forward. Any other thoughts? We're close to the top of the hour. So any other thoughts from everyone here? I don't know what that is. Well, hey, we've got a little quiz here at the end for the folks that are left. Wanted to find out, and I think my partner Chris did this. I put this in as a little survey at the end. And I really like this. You know, has this been valuable time for you? Did you get value out of it? If it's extremely valuable, great. If it's not, please reach out and let us know how we can improve. Actually do that anyways. You know, let us know what we can do. If you're liking these, that's great. And we're hoping to do more of them. And what I hope to see, and I know the rest of us do as well, especially the partners at Edge and Meridian, is that folks in the community want to start doing some of these as well on subjects that they're interested in. I know we're doing this Coach's Corner kind of as something that we do to get the well primed, but hey, the more the merrier. There's a lot of topics and a lot of information you all know that we would love to learn from as well. So it's all about building that community. So I thank you for your time today. And this has been a lot of fun. For me, it's certainly a topic I'm very passionate about, and I hope all of you are as well. And I look forward to your contributions on the community in terms of your experiences and success suggestions that you have in terms of helping others to influence without authority.
Could I add something, Mike?
Absolutely.
So for those of you who haven't seen it yet, we're going through and we've created this community and then got these subgroups in it, if you will. And we're in the process of, we as a team probably have enough courses that you could literally take a course every day with us for the next 3 months and never cover the same topic twice. So we're taking some of that material that we've got and we're starting to populate it in the community. And so as you're going forward, please check out the material as we're posting it. It's going to take us some time because we got quite a bit and we just got started, but I know that I've got a list of about 50 things that are going to end up in various communities. So if you take a look at the material, comment if you'd like, and let us know what you think about it. And let us know if there's something you want, you know, and we'll be glad to put it in, you know, we'll be glad to make it available to you if we've got it. That I'll conclude.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great start to your week and look forward to seeing you in the community.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.